Ever get that feeling like something just doesn't add up? Like you're sure there's more to the story.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, today we're diving into a case that'll leave you feeling exactly that. It's a story of wrongful conviction, a 74-minute phone call, and a man's fight to clear his name.
It's one of those cases that really makes you question everything you think you know about the justice system. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're talking about J.J. Velasquez, convicted of murdering a retired police officer, but he claims he was on the phone with his mother the whole time the crime took place.
A 74-minute phone call, to be exact.
Yeah, 74 minutes. Now, you'd think that would be enough to prove his innocence, right?
On the surface, it seems like a pretty open and shut case, doesn't it? But things are rarely that simple.
That's why we're here. For this deep dive, we're going to unpack court transcripts, personal letters from JJ, and even interviews with his family.
We're trying to piece together how this could have happened, how someone with a seemingly airtight alibi ends up behind bars.
So let's start by getting to know JJ before all of this happened. He grew up in the Bronx. Good kid. Loved dinosaurs, even got accepted into a special law program in high school.
Yeah, he had a lot of potential, by all accounts. But, life has a way of throwing curveballs.
For sure. For JJ, that turning point came around 16, dropped out of school, got involved with drugs, struggling to find his way.
It's a familiar story, unfortunately, but then something happened that seemed to shift his perspective.
He became a father.
Yeah, two boys, John and Jacob.
Fatherhood can change a man.
It can definitely make you reassess your priorities, that's for sure.
And that brings us to January 27th, 1998, the day that changed everything.
A retired police officer, Al Ward, was murdered during a robbery at an illegal gambling spot in Harlem.
Now, JJ says he was at home in the Bronx with his girlfriend Vanessa and their infant sons.
Right, so we have a crime scene in Harlem, and JJ, according to him at least, miles away in the Bronx.
And here's where that 74-minute phone call comes in. See, the next day was JJ's late father's birthday, and he wanted to visit the grave with both his mother and Vanessa.
Makes sense.
But there was a problem. His mother, Maria, and Vanessa weren't on speaking terms.
Oh boy, family drama.
So picture this. The morning of the murder, JJ is on the phone with his mother, trying to convince her to come to the cemetery. Put her differences with Vanessa aside.
So we potentially have two witnesses who can place JJ at home during the time of the murder.
His mother and Vanessa. A 74-minute phone call.
A pretty solid alibi, it would seem.
Well, hold on, because the prosecution had their own story to tell.
Of course. They had to build a case, right?
They relied heavily on eyewitness testimony. 5 witnesses in total.
Eyewitness testimony is powerful stuff. It can really sway a jury.
But here's the catch. Several of those witnesses initially described the shooter as a black man, and JJ is Hispanic.
That's a pretty significant discrepancy.
Right. And it gets even stranger. One of the witnesses, an 84-year-old woman named Dorothy Kennedy, misidentified a juror as the gunman during the trial.
You can't make this stuff up. It really makes you question the reliability of eyewitness accounts,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And there's another detail that adds to the mystery. JJ says while he was in a holding cell before the trial, he ran into one of the witnesses, a man named Augustus Brown. Brown allegedly whispered to JJ, "They're making me do it."
Whoa. Now, if that's true, that's huge. It suggests that there might have been some pressure or coercion involved, to get Brown to testify against JJ.
Exactly. So much is unclear.
There.
Okay, back to that phone call. Both Vanessa and Maria testified about it, supporting JJ's alibi.
They put their credibility on the line for him.
Maria's testimony was especially powerful. She was adamant. Said she knew her son was home because she was on the phone with him. How could she be wrong?
It's hard to imagine a mother lying about something like that, especially under oath.
But if the prosecution acknowledged the call happened, how did they try to discredit it?
Well, they could have suggested someone else was on the phone, maybe Vanessa. Or maybe they questioned the accuracy of Maria's memory. 74 minutes is a long time.
They basically accused Maria, JJ's own mother, of lying to protect her son.
It happens sometimes, sadly.
The jury deliberated for 3 long days. And the verdict, not guilty of first-degree murder, but guilty of second-degree murder.
A mixed verdict. That's unusual, isn't it?
His mother, Maria, was devastated. She just couldn't believe it.
It's a parent's worst nightmare, to see your child punished for something you believe they didn't do.
And the impact on JJ's sons, especially John, who was growing up in the same tough environment as his dad, was heartbreaking. JJ had wanted to break that cycle.
It's tragic. The ripple effects of this conviction extend far beyond JJ himself.
Now we're left with a ton of unanswered questions. What about Dare? JJ's alleged accomplice. He pleaded guilty but never actually testified. Why were there discrepancies in the eyewitness accounts? And what about Augustus Brown and that strange statement in the holding cell?
So many loose ends. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
And just when you think it can't get any more complicated, there's a bombshell. Years later, going through his case files, JJ discovered something shocking. Just days after the crime, the NYPD had another prime suspect, a man named Mustafa.
Wait a minute. Another suspect. This changes everything.
It was like a twist you'd see in a movie, right?
Absolutely. If the police had Mustafa as a lead, why was JJ even on their radar? Something doesn't add up here.
Who is Mustafa, and why did the NYPD seemingly drop this lead? Well, that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
It's wild, right? Like they had a suspect and then shifted gears completely onto JJ.
Yeah, you gotta wonder what was going on there. So who is this Mustafa guy? Why did the police seemingly just drop him?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's the question that's been haunting JJ for the past 2 decades.
Imagine spending years in prison, knowing there might have been another suspect all along.
It's a nightmare scenario, isn't it? And then having to become your own investigator because the system failed you.
We've read some of JJ's letters from prison, and the emotional toll is just palpable.
Yeah, he talks about sleepless nights, the constant fear for his son's futures.
Just that crushing weight of being trapped for something you say you didn't do.
It's a heavy burden to carry, no doubt.
And it's not just JJ who's suffering. His mom, Maria, she's dedicated her life to fighting for his release.
She visits him, writes him letters, constantly advocating for him.
It speaks volumes about her love for him and her belief in his innocence.
But it also highlights the erosion of trust in the justice system.
Right. Like when a mother feels she has to fight this hard for her son's freedom, it suggests a breakdown somewhere.
It raises serious questions about the system's ability to protect the innocent.
Remember, Maria initially had faith in the system. She believed justice would prevail, that the truth would come out.
And then the verdict and this revelation about Mustafa just shattered that faith.
It's a harsh reminder that justice isn't always a straight line, you know.
It's messy, complicated, susceptible to human error.
And speaking of messy and complicated, JJ's in his 40s now, over 2 decades behind bars. His oldest son, John, is an adult, facing those same harsh realities of life in the Bronx.
The same environment JJ grew up in, the cycle he was trying to break for his kids.
John has even had some run-ins with the law himself, and he's talked about feeling like he could end up just like his dad.
Wrongly accused, trapped in a system that seems rigged against him.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, isn't it? The system creates this distrust, this fear, and then that fear leads to more of the same.
It's a vicious cycle.
Despite all of this, JJ has tried to stay positive. He reads a lot, exercises to stay sharp, and continues to fight for his freedom.
He's turned his cell into a makeshift legal library, studying his case, learning about the law.
It's remarkable, finding strength in such a dark place.
It's a testament to the human spirit, but it also underscores the urgent need for reform in the system.
So we have this man convicted based on flawed eyewitness testimony, a potentially viable alternate suspect ignored by the police, and a family torn apart by a system that seems to have failed them at every turn.
It's a case study in systemic flaws, you know?
Why wasn't the 74-minute phone call given more weight? What made the police zero in on JJ when there was another potential suspect? And what about Augustus Brown and that chilling statement about being forced to testify?
It's like a puzzle with too many missing pieces.
And these are the questions that haunt this case, questions that demand answers.
We need to understand how a system designed for justice can produce such profound injustices.
It's why JJ's story resonates with so many people. It forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our legal system.
It makes us question whether any of us are truly safe from being caught in the same web of mistakes and biases.
It's a story that demands our attention, our critical thinking, and our commitment to advocating for change.
It's about more than just one man's freedom. It's about the integrity of the entire system.
JJ's story is far from over. He's still fighting, still searching for answers, and his fight continues in our next part.
You know, it's crazy to think about it, a 74-minute phone call, and it wasn't enough.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
You would think that'd be the end of it, right? Case closed.
You'd assume so? Yeah. But this case just shows how complicated things can get.
What could have been strong enough to make the jury doubt that alibi?
The prosecution must have had a strong counterargument.
So they convinced the jury that even with the phone call, he could still be guilty.
Right. They might have suggested it was a planned thing. to create a false alibi?
Or that maybe someone else made that call while JJ was somewhere else.
Exactly. There are a lot of possibilities.
It makes you wonder how much doubt is reasonable doubt, you know?
Tough question. Where do you draw the line between reasonable doubt and just speculation?
And this isn't just about JJ.
No, it's bigger than that.
It makes you think, could this happen to anyone? What if we were in his shoes? It's a scary thought. What if we were wrongly accused and the evidence seemed to be stacked against us?
Makes you wonder what protections we have against that sort of thing.
Are there enough safeguards in place? Or are we all just vulnerable to the same kind of mistakes?
So what are the takeaways from JJ's story? What can our listeners learn from all of this?
I think one of the biggest things is to be critical thinkers. Don't just take things at face value.
Question everything.
Exactly. Look at the evidence. Consider different angles.
And don't forget about bias.
Right. Bias can be conscious or unconscious. It can affect how evidence is presented, how questions are asked, even the makeup of the jury.
It's a reminder that the system is run by people. And people make mistakes.
We're all human. We're all fallible. And the justice system is no different.
So where do we go from here? How do we prevent these kinds of miscarriages of justice?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about strengthening how alibis are evaluated and improving training for law enforcement on things like eyewitness identification.
Making sure all leads are fully investigated.
It's about creating a culture of accountability and transparency.
We have to expect better from the system and from ourselves.
It's on all of us to be engaged, to be informed, and to speak up when we see injustice.
JJ's story isn't over yet. He's still fighting, still looking for the truth. And his story should motivate us all to do the same.
His struggle is a reminder that we're all connected, and fighting for justice is a responsibility we all share.
If it can happen to JJ, it can happen to any of us. So it's time to step up, demand more, and create a system that truly protects the innocent.
JJ's fight is a fight for a fairer, more just world for everyone.
This deep dive has been a heavy one.
It's not always easy to confront these difficult truths.
But it's important. We've seen how flawed the system can be, how easily things can go wrong.
But we've also seen incredible resilience, the power of hope, and the unwavering love between a mother and son.
As we move forward, let's take these lessons with us.
Be critical, think for yourselves, and demand accountability.
Never stop fighting for a better world.
A world where justice is truly served.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, justice isn't something we just watch. It's something we have to actively participate in.
We have to question, challenge, and demand better.
Hopefully JJ's story has inspired you to do just that.